There was a dream. There was a dream. Wolves and sheep together, nations at peace, weapons of war turned into tools of harvest. There was a dream. The vulnerable supported, poverty and injustice broken, the aching made whole. And this dream became flesh on the tongues of the prophets, in the dreams of the people, in the body of our Christ. And this dream of God becomes flesh in you and in me as we follow in God's holy way and live the love of Jesus. Please sing with me in loving partnership. You all know that I love sitting on the land. I love being in creation, as we say, which always reminds me of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Do you remember that? And there was I think it was in the fourth book, that going outside was actually, he considered going inside. And being in our houses was outside, right? Because of the web of life. So when I spend time inside the backyard, I love the birds. They just connect me to creation and to God in wondrous ways. The other day, as I was sitting, there was crows. Crow arrived, and big, lousy kerfuffle, cawing, that crazy noise. And I got to thinking about, how is it in our world that crows have become seen as annoyance, right? Crow as interrupter, we would say, to my peaceful repast with the juncos, so to speak. Crow as interrupter, crow as annoyance. A part of creation we dislike. It's like seagulls and crow, but I'm talking about crow today. Somehow, I think it was Friday morning, I thought, maybe crow is in fact truth teller. Maybe that's why we find crow so annoying. Because we're having these placid, peaceful moments where we think we know everything and that all seems right in the world in the way that we like it to be. Until Crow the interrupter, Crow the advocate, some might say, Crow the truth teller arrives and says stuff that we have yet to figure out. Either way, it's good for us to recognize the parts of the web of life, the parts of this land, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. It's important for us to recognize the parts of the web, parts of this land, parts of the story that we dismiss as annoyance, as bothersome, a truth which may be hard to hear or even understand when first hearing it. This morning, let us recommit to listening to all of the parts of this land, all the beings who live on it, human and beyond human. Let us recommit to moving toward right relations with each and every one and listening to all the sounds and stories that are here. Welcome to Shaughnessy Heights United Church this morning. Welcome to those of you who are here in person. Special welcome to those of you who are online. Thanks for sticking it out with us online, and we're glad that the Spirit gathers us as one people through the intertube, up and through the space, and down here into this place, and right here in our gathered hearts as well. The Spirit is wondrous, especially when it joins with technology. I love it. There are a number of announcements this morning, but I'm going to lead us off by inviting our special guest, Catherine Evans from Pacific Spirit United Church, has urgent information for us that the folks over there would like to share with us, and they've sent their beloved emissary, Catherine. Welcome, Catherine. Nice to be here.
Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm here on behalf of Pacific Spirit United Church and 3 other Westside churches who have been working together for many years to sponsor and support refugees seeking safety and a future in Canada. Very recently, this group of churches successfully landed the first of a family of 4 Syrian refugees who we co-sponsored with the Rainbow Refugee Coalition. As mentioned, there's now an urgent need to raise new funds for a Rohingya family. This family came to the attention of the churches through a member of Pacific Spirit who has worked in refugee camps around the world. To protect everyone involved, and because we are live streamed, I will not be using names. This church member has twice been on the ground, first in Myanmar, which you might know as Burma, and more recently in Bangladesh, to support Rohingya people displaced from their homes and persecuted by the Myanmar military. Some of you may remember that Bob Rae, Canada's current UN ambassador, was appointed as Canada's special envoy to Myanmar to assess and report on the violent events of 2017 that led to nearly 700,000 Rohingya fleeing to neighboring Bangladesh in that year alone. His report pointed to widespread crimes against humanity, what the Myanmar military called a clearance operation, and others have more accurately since called ethnic cleansing. Some of you may have also heard the radio news this morning. The Rohingya were back in the news again. Apparently there's a effort to forcibly conscript young Rohingya men into the military civil conflict that has been racking Burma, now Myanmar, for decades. But back to our family. While in Bangladesh, the Pacific Spirit member, who I'll call my friend, reconnected with a Rohingya family who they had known previously when working in Myanmar. In Myanmar, the father of this family had worked for the same organization as my friend, providing translation and other supports at great risk to himself. But like so many Myanmar, the father and his family have now been forced out of, so many Rohingyas, the father and his family have been forced out of Myanmar and are living in refugee camps near the town of Cox's Bazar in southern Bangladesh. The Cox's Bazar camps are collectively the largest refugee camp in the world. They have been described as heaving, unsanitary, and crime-ridden, where now some 1 million Rohingya refugees eke out an existence. All are dependent on international aid, as Bangladesh will not allow them to leave the camps to work. As an educated and English-speaking person, the father, and particularly his family, are targets for human traffickers and the criminal gangs operating in the camps, And they have been victimized already in this way. Getting the family out of this situation as quickly as possible is urgent. In past years, we have been able to bring a refugee to Canada before all the funds for the entire sponsorship period were deposited in a bank. Pledged funds, for example, a pledge of funds was accepted, but this is no longer possible. So to raise the very significant sum of money we need to start the sponsorship application, we are reaching out to others in our own networks and in our church network. I'm happy to say we've made good progress, but we need your help, and more importantly, the Rohingya family that we hope to sponsor needs your help. I'll be here through the service and after to answer any questions that you may have. You may want some more details that I can't speak here, and to give you information about how you can make a donation. And thank you very, very much for allowing me to speak to you today.
Thank you, Catherine. The information also will be in our Wednesday In Touch. So if you didn't catch everything, talk to Catherine, but also links and that sort of thing will be there on Wednesday for us to join in that work together if possible. Other things I wanted to lift up to your attention today, well, Thursday was Pi Day in the mathematics world, 3.14, of course, but also in the Canadian many mainline churches, we call it Pi Day, P-I-E, that's public, intentional, and explicit. And of course, we didn't gather on Thursday. Well, the choir did. I don't know if they had pie. But we are going to have pie after church today to celebrate Pi Day. And they look gorgeous, and the hall looks fantastic. So we hope that you'll stay and enjoy some Pi Day celebrations, public, intentional, and explicit. Next Saturday is our monthly Wild Church gathering with the folks from Pacific Spirit United Church and any friends that you'd like to bring along. And we are going to meet at 1 p.m. next Saturday at the Fraser River Trail, one portion of it, the portion that's down at the end of Balaclava Street and Carnarvon, down that way. You'll see the exact directions in the In Touch. But if you'd like to try something new, you'd like to be prayerful in creation with a group of other people, go for a quiet walk, come on down to the Fraser River Trail next Saturday at 1 p.m. and we'll see you there. Holy Week is coming up upon us. Always surprises preachers in many ways, like Holy Week is all of a sudden here, but it starts with Palm Sunday next Sunday. And I invite you to look at the posts on our Facebook page, Instagram, and web page, and also in the In Touch for the schedule. Holy Week is a great time to invite a friend to church. There are people who would love to come, especially for Easter morning. There are even some of your friends who would love to come for sunrise service. So make a phone call, send an email. And I did want to note that Heather Clark has sent out or posted on our Facebook page an invitation for Barry Morris and the Longhouse Ministry to join them for walking the Stations of the Cross in the downtown east side, and that'll be at 12:15 next on Good Friday. So our service is at 10, and we can easily get down to the downtown east side. And I remember Heather saying what a powerful, powerful walk that was last year, and we could join her in that, and Barry and the folks from the Longhouse Good Friday at 12:15 p.m. Has been our recent practice. We move into a time of celebrations and concerns. I'm going to start because 17 years ago today, I married Reverend Deb Walker. Where is she? She's there. I thought you were over there. There. Sorry, I pointed to Ben by mistake. Oops. Reverend Deb Walker. Boy, 17 years on St. Patrick's Day. And for those of you who don't know, we planned it in a week. We decided the Saturday before. We got up out of bed and said, let's get married next Saturday and have a party. And we did. And my parents flew from Nova Scotia. My sister flew from BC with a 2-month-old baby. It was just, well, insanity and fun all at the same time. So happy anniversary. Any other words of celebration this morning or thanksgiving for our community?
I just want to celebrate how cute Robin looks with her haircut. Robin, it's fantastic. And I hope it feels good.
It's the first time I've heard a haircut celebrated in church, so that's good, Robin. That's the first long ministry.
I just wanted to celebrate and say how happy I am that Maya and Quinn are both here today. Hello.
Other words of celebration or thanksgiving? How about words of concern, things that are heavy on your heart, people that you'd like us to hold in prayer as the week comes on?
My friend, who would prefer not to be named, is recovering from an illness and is going through a rather difficult time.
Other words of concern?
My niece Jillian in Edmonton.
Other words of concern? I'll invite our friend Lindsay to light the candle for us. Siblings in Christ, I invite you to stand in spirit or in body and share with each other symbols and words of the peace of Christ. Peace of Christ to you all. To those of you at home, peace of Christ to you. That was Ben's piece. World premiere. Can we thank Ben? Wow. That was something else. Good morning. I'm going to grab a chair here too. Is Elliot? Move Elliot here. Gwen, are you going to come have a seat? I'm going to have a seat here. Oh, hang on. I thought I was going to have a seat. Let me just try my chair. Oh, ow, no, I just keep hitting my knees every time I try and sit down. Let me try one more time. Oh, do you know what? Oh, that really hurts. I'm going to try and move this table. I think that's what I need to do. The chair, I can move the chair. I'm going to move the table. Okay, hang on. Oh, I can barely budge it. Let me put a foot on. Oh, I can't even. No, I cannot move that, and my chair is in the way. Maya, could you help me maybe push this table? Quinn, could you help me with this table, please? Come on, somebody help me. Somebody help me, okay? Now what we do is count to 3, right? When you go 1, 2, 3, and then when we say 3, we move it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, now let me try it. Put my chair where it goes. Oh, so much leg room. That is lovely. Now we can sit and have a little chat. That is fantastic. And my knees are just starting to stop hurting. That's perfect. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Maya, for helping me move this heavy, heavy, heavy table. Sometimes there's things that we are unable to do by ourselves. Sometimes there are things we need to have moved, or walks that we want to take, but we're a little scared. We don't want to do it by ourselves. Or there's things we want to buy, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need a little bit of help, maybe mommy or daddy's money or something like that, right? But what I thought about by trying to move this table was how nice it is to have help. Do you like it when people help you? Yeah. Do you know what we call that, what we just did? Ernie and Bert on Sesame Street would call it cooperation, right? In our church, though, we often use the word partnership. Have you ever heard that word before? Like you and me, we're partners, meaning we're helpers together. Yeah, partners is a word that means together helpers, right? And that's what we did. Should we try it again? Would you be my partner in moving this table? Will you be? Yeah, okay, let's go on the count of 3. Ready? Partners? 1, 2, 3. Oh, see, it even worked. It moved even better that time. Now I can just put my feet right up. Look at that. Oh, that's so great. Because I had partners. I had friends who would help me with a big job. And you know what? Jesus always talked about getting people together to do good things. That's why we come to this place. We come to this place to sing and to pray and to talk about God, but also to remember to get together to do big things in the world. Hey? I hope you can continue to be my partners. Let's think of new things to do together, okay? Okay? All right? What do you think, Maya? Yeah? You like being partners? Yeah, me too. Okay, good. Let's sing Though Ancient Walls.
Stars unending mercy, we pray with those who are crying. For women and men who are battered in body or spirit, for children who sleep the fitful sleep of hunger, for all who are imprisoned by walls or worries, for all who are despondent because they feel unloved. Christ, have mercy upon those who cry. Christ, have mercy on us when we turn away from the cries of others. Give us the strength of compassion, that we may not shield our eyes and hearts from the pain of our siblings, but seek to understand and to heal. Bless us with courage and arm us with hope, that we may help lessen the suffering of our world. Hear this, our common prayer, and those of our hearts which we offer now. God of our tender care, we pray with those who are praying. We join the spoken and silent prayers that come to you from throughout the world, from sanctuaries and street corners, from battle lines and prison cells, from hospital rooms and festive tables. With bowed heads or heads held high, standing boldly or kneeling quietly, we pray to you with thanks, with sorrow, with urgency. We ask your guidance. We rest in your comfort. Speak, O God, to your praying people everywhere. Hear this, our common prayer, and those of our hearts which we offer now. God of overflowing joy, we pray with those who are singing. We rejoice with sunset watchers, beach walkers, embracing lovers, playing children, new parents, old friends, and all in whom your living spirit wells up and overflows. Help us to feel it surging within us. Enable us to shower it upon the world. For your steadfast love to those who have come before, your continual goodness to us, and your promised care for those who are yet to come, we give you thanks, O God. Hear this, our common prayer, and those of our hearts which we offer now.
This is a reading from the book of Isaiah, chapter 58, verses 3 to 6. Why do we fast, but you do not see? Why humble ourselves, but you do not notice? Look, you serve your own interest on your fast day and oppress all your workers. You fast only to quarrel and to fight, and to strike with a wicked fist. Such fasting as you do today will not make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast that I choose, a day to humble oneself? Is it to bow down the head like a bulrush, and to lie in sackcloth and ashes? Will you call this a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see the naked to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and God will say, "Here I am."
As Reverend Deb comes up to share with us some of her own truth from the from the ecumenical table, I wanted just to recap that we are walking through the theological banquet and its 5 tables, as in the understanding of Janet Gear, who brought this wonderful work to the United Church of Canada. There is an evangelical table some of us find ourselves sitting at. There is an ecclesial table, a missional table, an ecumenical table, and next week a spiritual table. And all of those are not words or theologies or dogmas we speak, but ways that we live our lives. And today we're going to hear from Reverend Deb about the ecumenical lived faith.
Thank you. When I was a child and an early reader, we lived in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. We got the Sault Star every weekend. Well, we probably got it throughout the week, but I only looked at the Saturday one because of the cartoons. And in the classified ads, there was always an ad. It was called AIM, and it was an ad for children to be adopted. And it was the Adopt an Indian Métis ad. But as I said, I wasn't a tremendous reader, and I couldn't understand why children were being advertised in the newspaper. And I asked my mom and dad about it, and honestly, I don't think they understood it either. And I look back now and I realize that was the 60s scoop. And I was a sensitive child, and so I thought a lot about that. You can look it up online if you Google AIM, A-I-M, classified ads, and they'll come up, and they are shocking. I thought about this, and we lived on a street in a brand new subdivision, and we knew all the people on the street. And so one morning over breakfast, I said to my dad, I thought of something we can do. I could go to every house and ask everyone for 5 cents, like for a nickel. And then we could give that money to these children who have no parents. And my dad shared with me that that's called taxes. And from then on, I contemplated continuously what taxes could fund. My first protest march was in the 80s, and I was too young to go by myself, so my mom and dad came with me, and it was about the proliferation of nuclear weapons, and we sang, "All we are saying is give peace a chance." University, I protested the free trade agreements, women's rights. I was a young mother, and so I marched for daycare wages and rights for women working in the daycare industry. Because it was the 80s, I also walked for rights for those living with AIDS and HIV. When I had my first full-time ministry job, I had a 3-month-old baby when 9/11 happened. And so then I was obsessed with peace. I worked in rural Alberta where poverty looks very different. So I marched for food banks and access to food, for teachers' welfare. And then in the early 2000s, the language seems antiquated now, but for equal marriage. And I think I was one of the first clergy to marry a lesbian couple in Saskatoon. My congregation hadn't even made a marriage policy yet. It was legal in the land, but we had no policy about it. And I said, I don't know if you want to fire me, but I feel compelled to say yes to performing this marriage. And the congregation went for it, and we created policy. Through my daughter's daycare, I became involved with missing and murdered women and girls. Summer came home one day when she was 4 years old and said, Faith's mom is missing. And I honestly will never forget my response. I said, oh, Summer, moms don't go missing. But Faith's mom was lost to us forever. Fridays for the Earth was where, that was Greta Thunberg's project, where high school kids would skip off on Friday and they would meet and in a flash mob and protest for the Earth. And it turned out our house had everything to make posters, and I will tell you, it still does. We attended Idle No More round dances, and then the work of reconciliation. I am a trained blanket exercise facilitator and also was trained to receive first-person testimony at the TRC event in Saskatoon, which I did on 2 occasions. We walked in the cold for health care for new Canadians and refugees. In their tight-fistedness, the Saskatchewan government decided they would save money by eliminating any health care for new Canadians and refugees. And then what really kicked me into high gear was when Stephen Harper's government took all of the funding away from Kairos. Kairos was an ecumenical international project that had programs and partnerships that had gone on for 30, sometimes 40 years. And they stripped every dollar of funding from that project. It was right around Bev Oda's $18 orange juice fiasco, and I think it was a distraction. But it really put me into orbit. It drove me to run for a federal riding, and then I became quite political. I walked to support interfaith freedom and relationships in the face of violence and discrimination, and I walked for harm reduction. I protested for the Wet'suwet'en Nation's self-determination about their lands. We built fires in the middle of an intersection, and we walked in minus 40 degrees. I worked hard for Pride events. I hosted a Pride bakery, Pride events that were specifically for family and children. We worked hard to protect trans rights. And I was on the team that hosted the very first Two-Spirit powwow in all of Canada. And that was funded by a $10,000 grant from the United Church Healing Fund. I have had meetings with MPs, meetings in City Hall with mayors, and I have even cried and stomped out of a meeting with an MP. I was there with a bunch of old white men, retired priests and bishops and me, and it was 2 days before Christmas, and I had just gotten my period. It was this emergency meeting, and it was about the Kairos funding, and it was so outrageous, and I was on such a thin thread. And I hopped out of my chair and said, I'm not going to take this anymore, and I think I yelled a little bit, and then I left, and that afternoon, again, this is 2 days before Christmas, all of the gentlemen that had been with me for that meeting, they phoned me and they said, we are so sorry we didn't leave with you. because it got worse after you left, and we will never do that to you again. After I walked the Camino years ago, it was during the Standing Rock protests. When I arrived home, I felt so full of spirit that I actually considered taking my energy to Standing Rock. And then I thought, that's ridiculous. Our own rural northern resource towns are overwhelmed with grief and struggle. So I took my full heart up north on the Greyhound bus, and I lived in Lac La Ronge for a week by myself. I walked around the lake every day, and it was a way for me to decompress from my own pilgrimage, but it was also a way to acknowledge the pain and the struggle that exists everywhere. Weeks later, the provincial bus service was eliminated, and so I protested that. We've walked for years for the coldest night of the year to highlight the need for regulated drug supply, safety, and affordable, sustainable housing in our city. Then there was my 100-day dress commitment to avoid fast fashion. I attend the meetings of First Call, which focuses on youth and child advocacy, a poverty report card, kinship care, wraparound funding for young adults who are aging out of income assistance. And then there is the beloved climate justice, Wild Church, Mother Tree School, and COP28. On my darkest days, I wish I didn't care so much. Why do I care so much? Why can't I just forget about it and leave it alone? Walk away. But then I hear something about the evidence of a living wage and the transformation it could lead to, or the positive outcomes of co-housing, or alternative initiatives in education and childcare that are building free, or other valuable green initiatives that could change the world. I think about the plastic treaty being negotiated in Ottawa at the end of April with 172 countries, and I get excited. My heart starts to feel strangely warmed when I meet other people like me. People who make signs, people who say, let's go, people who speak to strangers with other signs. Those who have seen God's spirit of justice at work in the world, actually at work in the world, making stuff happen. And I still have a very strong notion of how taxes should be spent. And I pray earnestly for those who must make those decisions. And I give thanks that we live in a nation where we can disagree, that we worship and praise a God in community, where we reflect the bold and thrilling abundance of a community that celebrates God's rainbow people. It is not easy to be led by your heart, but each one of these issues is personal to me at a different stage in my life. And God's justice to me is policy-based love. God, for me, is discovered in the intersectionality of justice, and I love God in that space. And that space allows me to know and serve others.
For most of my life, I did not go to protests, marches, and walks. But 17 years ago, on this very day, I married Reverend Deb Walker. Now I go to protests, walks, and marches. And I am better for it. That list sounded busy and fantastic, and I just can't believe it. All that love. Deb is truly a person who sits at the ecumenical table at the theological banquet of the United Church of Canada. The ecumenical table, there is a lived faith that often comes unbidden, collects you in a sense of a wrong that must be righted, a longing that feels as much like a longing for justice as a longing for God. For the ecumenical, these two things cannot be pulled apart. If there's someone in your congregation providing you with resources on Indigenous rights, climate action, peace in Palestine, the needs of asylum seekers, or the status of food security, it will be an ecumenical. Who is voluntarily standing in that painful gap between the status quo and the flourishing of life? Whose lived faith stirs them in the direction of longing for what could be or what should be? For the ecumenical, God is met and experienced in the world's hunger for the kingdom, the longing for justice and peace. Longing for God is love of God for an ecumenical. They live in anticipation. Their home is made of hope for what is yet to come and furnished by glimpses of God's reign erupting in the meantime. Meeting our ecumenicals, those whose way of being Christian, of being human, whose way of faith and loving God is to allow the world's pain to demand their attention and to keep it. Where missionals, who we spoke of last week, are drawn in compassion to ease the suffering of others, ecumenicals are drawn to stop it. The ecclesials live by the words that Jack read from Isaiah 58. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. I think my first experience of a true ecclesial was Janet Tupper. She was, in my mind, the matriarch of my childhood congregation in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. She also was the spouse of a former minister, Borden Tupper. I just love that name, Borden Tupper. Okay? Borden Tupper was as ancient as the hills and always walked with a cane or a walker, and Janet was his vibrant, wondrous spouse who gathered the whole Sunday school, and in those days it was a big Sunday school, down in the basement of the church for what I call the Timbit exercise. Some of you may remember this. There were country names on all of the tables, and you were to go to the country assigned to you. So you're sit at a mixed table of mixed ages, and there were Timbits on the table, piles of them for some. So the United States and Canada had like 35 Timbits, right? But way over in Ethiopia, remember the 80s, way over in Ethiopia there was a crumb or two, maybe a quarter of a Timbit. And all the other countries and so on and so forth with varying amounts of Timbits with no direction. Just quiet from the leadership, from Janet Tupper, to see what would happen. It was an exercise in inequality. It was an exercise, we hoped, in sharing. Some kids, probably the Americans just start stuffing them, right? And others broke them in half, don't give too much, and others gave whole Timbits. And eventually, the Timbits started to move around and even out a little bit, and then we had a conversation with Janet Tupper, the great ecclesial, about the world and how unjust and unfair it can be sometimes. I was like 9 years old. The Greek word oikumene, that's where we get ecumenical from, is most often translated as the whole inhabited earth. Gordon, do you remember that banner at BC Conference, the oikumene banner? It was gorgeous. Oikos, from which we get eco, like in economy and ecology, is very related to the concepts of house or household. So ecumenical means the house of the whole earth. You may automatically think, when you hear the term, of interchurch dialogue or partnership between Christian denominations. But for our theological banquet table meanings, we mean partnerships that feed, that serve the whole inhabited earth. In the I-Church of Canada, being ecumenical means being part of God's kingdom building. Much of this ecumenical identity has been lived through regional and national councils, actually not as much lived out in local communities of faith. Here at the church level, the congregation level, we still tend to concentrate on discipleship, spreading the good news, building a community of faith, and inside of that, hands-on missional work. But I noticed many years back at Saskatchewan Conference that there was the same people and the same types of people who kind of trickled toward regional work instead of local work. They trickled towards justice work, and it seemed to be happening at the conference and regional level. And I kind of just used to be a little glib about that and think, well, they weren't listened to by their own people, so they've come to share it with all of us. But now I realize ecumenical work is tricky to do on a whole congregational level, except in spits and spats or letter writing or money we might send. And we've often had our minds on other things like survival. Janet Geer lifts up a great close-at-home example of how ecumenicals nurture their lived faith outside of congregational life. Here it is, you'll love this. She said, an ecumenical might be a woman in her 70s who belongs to the local Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign and may come to church every Sunday, but her faith is nurtured, challenged, and lived out elsewhere among the circle of women whom she meets to hold the reality of HIV/AIDS in their vigilant attention. Often the lived faith of ecumenicals simply brushes against the life of a congregation from a distance, so it doesn't always have the chance to shape the whole lived faith of the congregation. We don't often find a whole ecumenical congregation, although I will say the Anglicans have one on the island. It's called the Salal and Cedar, which is an Anglican community of faith for the gathered around the sole purpose of love for the earth. And there are, I think, some United Church experiments about that in the Okanagan. The ecumenicals find that it is in the local Kairos group, that was 10 Days for Global Justice back when I was young, the local Kairos group, anti-poverty policy advocates, watershed disciples, sustainable farming communities, or reconciliation circles where their community of living spirit is found and where their lived faith is nurtured. If you ask them, what is God doing? They'd say God is eternally healing, reconciling, and restoring the world God desires to flourish. And what is the church for? The ecumenicals say, to be an agent of God's justice, peace, and reconciliation. Now the danger in the shadows. There's always some. The ecumenicals have dangers that are very easy to see. Burnout. The danger is burnout resulting from the weight of worldly concerns. Also, a hazard, ecumenicals are susceptible to a sense of urgency and may become impatient with others and demanding of themselves. I'm looking at Dorothy, my impatient servant of Jesus. The shadow side of the ecumenical is less obvious because it comes out of their strengths. It's just a slight shadowing of their strengths. Like other shadows, it disguises itself in a strength. The first two strands of the ecumenical strength are their conviction for God's promise of abundant life for all right here and right now. And the second strand is their willingness to be deployed in the divine unfolding of that promise. The shadow comes when the ecumenical has lost hope in God. The strands then begin to fray. Their desire can turn to desperation, and their meeting place with God, their faith in God, it can erode. This desperation can wear the guise of proficiency and drive, which is an admirable cover-up for a frayed sense of hope. You know what this looks like. Lost hope can remain in place for a long time, disguised and commended as a commitment to hard work. Well, the antidote for this shadow and these dangers at the theological banquet comes from our siblings at the spiritual table. We're going to get to them next week. Spirituals provide the antidote to the ecumenical shadow. The spirits are deeply attuned to encountering the Spirit in all things. And spirituals' commitment to inner work and their openness to other faiths and their connection to the natural world offers the ecumenicals a doorway where they might venture back and forth from their activist communities into deeply lived spiritual life and faith. I would say offering them bread for the journey and balm for their tired soul. The lived faith of the ecumenical demands integrity in every aspect of day-to-day life on the planet. How they vote, where they live, how they commute, what they eat, what they wear, even their contribution to congregational life. This is from Janet Gear, I love this. Famously unpopular as it is in most communities of faith, the ecumenicals will insist on fair trade coffee and plastic-free potlucks. Not because they are imposing their lifestyle on others, but because they love God through love of a hurting world, and they wish to do no harm. In my lived history in the United Church of Canada, the ecumenicals led us to a boycott of Nestle in the 70s and early 80s. Do you remember that? For those of you who missed it, Nestle was telling mothers in developing Africa that their breast milk wasn't healthy enough and that they should feed their children their Nestle formula. It's powdered, and they had to mix it with water, but the water was unclean, of course, and it was hurting their children. Oh, Robin is indignant about it still. I still boycott Nestle because of their misuse of water aquifers worldwide. They're taking, I would say, stealing of too much water and putting it in plastic bottles. Kairos, or 10 Days for Global Justice, taught me about drinking bottled water, which I don't do at all. Ecumenicals in the United Church also led us to respond to the Indigenous request for an apology from the United Church, which the very Reverend Bob Smith delivered in Sudbury in 1986. I was so happy to sit with Bob and Ellen this week over Zoom and talk to them about that. And of course, Bob would say it wasn't him. It came from many, many, many people over many years talking, living into relationship, and writing the apology. In fact, since the 1960s, it is the ecumenical table that has seemed to be the public face of the United Church of Canada. Sometimes people in other sibling churches, especially those who don't like us so much, just think we're kind of the hippy-dippy social activist church, and that's all we got. Ecumenicals help give us a strength and a guidance as we as a church fought for equal marriage. When we display our pride doors or celebrate Pi Day like today. When we walk in the Women's Memorial Walk, remembering missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, we are living out what we've been called to by the ecumenical table. For me personally, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission work and what followed in Saskatoon was my deepest connection to being at the table of the ecumenicals. I sat at meeting after meeting, in circle after circle, listening, and when introducing myself, often I would remind them that I was there on behalf of the United Church of Canada, one of the victimizers, one of the groups that ran the Indian residential schools, one of the parties to the out-of-court settlement, Indian residential school survivor settlement, the largest, what do they call that, class action suit in Canadian history. And it was important for me to say that that's why I was at the table, because most people had not been representing the oppressors or the abusers. It was important for people to hear that we were there seeking a new way together. And that is the blessing of the ecumenical table, the blessing it has for the whole church. Partnership, Maya. Partnership is the blessing from the ecumenical table. It's where the Christian church joins the rest of the world instead of keeping our heads in the sand, instead of thinking we can go it alone, like we invented justice or something. It's where the Christian church understands they are not the only answer to the problems of the world. I'm just going to say this. I was in a meeting on Wednesday, a workshop, where a Christian who was redeveloping on the downtown east side their location, honest to God said, there are 235 organizations serving the downtown east side. We know that only the Christian church will actually succeed. What? It was hard for me to hold my mouth. What? No. Partnership is where we learn we are not the only answer to the problems of the world. And I'm dreaming today, what if by going further out into the world in partnership and service, we end up finding ourselves again in a new and stronger way? And what if by going further out, we actually get found once again by the world? Now that's a hope I could live into. Amen.
New hymn today, everybody. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. That was really good. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference in the world. I think this sounds great. Wonderful.
Where's your tambourine?
Go make a difference, we can make a difference.
Now may the Christ who walks on wounded feet walk with you on the road. May the Christ who serves with wounded hands stretch out your hands to serve. May the Christ who loves with wounded heart open your hearts to love. And may you see the face of Christ in everyone you meet, and by everyone you meet, see the face of Christ in you. Amen.